Hey there, Mike. How are you doing, man?
We're doing great. We know a lot of weather was supposed to be out there. Are they still concerned for tonight? I heard Rob Manfred said if there was weather, they'd play the game tomorrow. Is there a legitimate concern for that?
Well, there's definitely thunderstorms in the forecast. They were in the forecast last night, too. In fact, the question last night was not supposed to be whether there was going to be a storm. It was whether the storm was going to be accompanied by hail and tornadoes. And we managed to dodge all of that until about an hour after the home run derby ended. So everybody's hoping that they get a window to get this game in tonight because it's a mammoth complication to have to move it to tomorrow. And the forecast that I looked at make it seem like we might have a rain delay, but I think there's a good chance they're going to play.
Well, that would be great, and obviously a lot of talk about the home run derby last night. You wrote about it. What a story with Toms Rivers, Todd Frazier, obviously the hometown guy in Cincinnati, winning that thing and winning this new formatted home run derby. It seems like everybody's talking about that derby today.
Yeah, it was awesome. I would say that nobody has written more words about the home run derby than me. For some reason, I've become Mr. Home Run Derby. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, or I need help or what. But that to me is the most fun and the most memorable and the most dramatic derby that I've ever covered, I've ever seen. And I think there are a couple of reasons for it. One is it's just so amazing that the format that they came up with was an accident. It was changed on the fly a couple of hours before the derby even started, and it worked so much better than what the format they were going to use that the indications I got today is that original format, which wasn't used last night, is never going to be used. They're going to keep this or some variation of this. They were going to stop the clock, in the final minute every time a guy hit a home run. And the fact that they didn't, that clock kept ticking, and Todd Frazier winds up hitting 3 dramatic buzzer beaters, that turned the home run derby into friggin' March Madness. It was awesome. And everybody loved the clock element, and the mano a mano element really made it fun and made it much better theater, a much better event. And then, of course, the other part of it was just who won. The fact that you had a guy like Todd Frazier, just such a likable, magnetic, effervescent guy who really enjoyed the moment and fed off those people in the seats, that really made it special because it was genuine. I don't know if you noticed this. I mean, there's several times he would sort of step out and look around and try to soak in the moment and soak in the emotion that was welling out of the seats and use it for fuel. And it really made the event great, unforgettable, and not just for people from Cincinnati. People I know who never really even cared about the home run derby before just loved that one. So I think you'll see that format stick around a while.
Jason, with that clock, the clock has been something we've been fighting as baseball fans. Is that the first step of saying, you know what, maybe a clock in some capacity wouldn't be bad for baseball?
Yeah, I actually brought this up today. We had meetings with both the Commissioner, Rob Manfred, and the head of the union, Tony Clark. And it's clear to me baseball loves clocks now, right? They love that timer out in center field between innings and during pitching changes, and they love that timer last night because as that clock clicks down, face it, that something's going to happen when it gets to zero or it gets close to zero. And, there's no doubt from talking to Rob Manfred today, they're experimenting with these 20-second pitch clocks in AA and AAA, and he likes them. He said what they're seeing is indications that could be useful in the big leagues. But when I asked Tony Clark about that, he actually described it as potentially dangerous to start fundamentally messing with the game on the field. So this is going to be a big issue because I think baseball is going to push for this, and I think they're going to run into a brick wall.
Jason Starks live in Cincinnati with the Major League Baseball All-Star Game tonight. The other guy, now Frazier, obviously right up the road about an hour from us, Toms River. He's like the All-American guy. He wins the Little League World Series. He makes it to the majors. He now wins the Home Run Derby. Where is he emerging in the National League? Is he a guy who is an MVP type of candidate? Is he a franchise? I mean, we don't hear as much about him because Trout in this area overshadows him so much. But here's two guys about an hour apart who are kind of going on a pretty nice pass.
Yeah, he's certainly the face of that franchise now, which is amazing. They gave a $200 million contract to Joey Votto. They gave a $100 million contract to Homer Bailey. And Todd Frazier is the guy who has emerged as the most popular Red, and you saw it again last night. Just a few weeks ago, there was a lot of buzzing about whether or not the Reds, who are about to make a lot of changes, would potentially trade Todd Frazier. What you saw last night was they can't. What I find interesting is, can they keep him? Can they possibly afford him with those other contracts hanging over their heads? I'm not sure they can, but he's a really important player, I think, in the future of the sport because he's got such a great personality. You know, the sport needs more Todd Fraziers. Every sport does. And, you know, if baseball can turn him into one of the faces of the next generation, they should. And I don't know if you've noticed this, Mike, but they've been running these commercials all year to promote various players who are bursting upon the scene. That, you know, the concept is this with an exclamation point. And Todd Frazier wins the home run derby last night. By the time I woke up this morning, there was one of those this commercials all about him already out there. Tells you something.
Yeah, a little different from the days of Bobby Abreu jacking 24 homers and then kind of flailing away. Here's Todd Frazier now, as you mentioned, the next day. He's all over the place. Obviously, Trout, is he, to you, the face of baseball? Is he still the most, recognizable guy, even though he plays in Anaheim?
Well, he's the best player in the game, and there's no doubt that he is a face of the sport. But, I just know in our research, Mike, when we look at these things, the guy who, we use the expression, moves the needle more than Mike Trout is Bryce Harper. If we do a Mike Trout piece on the air or a Mike Trout story on our website, a lot of people are interested in it. But when you do a Bryce Harper, he's one of the top 10 move the needle players in any sport right now. And so I don't know what that tells us, but I think the fact that Trout plays in Anaheim and that he's not a very controversial figure. He's a great guy. He's extremely genuine, and that's the best thing about him. But, Bryce Harper has got an edge to him. So people react to him one way or the other. I have a big piece today that looks at, the great young players in the game, and I hope people will read it. But one thing I did in that piece was look at all these players, the Trouts, the Harpers, the Stantons, on, and pick, right, who's the player from a previous golden age that they remind us of. Now, in Trout's case, it was Mickey Mantle. Nothing wrong with that, right? Pretty wholesome guy to be compared to. But in Bryce Harper's case, we decided he was a cross between Reggie Jackson and Pete Rose. And it's not just, for me, in the way those guys played versus the way he played. Those were two of the all-time lightning rods in recent baseball history. And I think Bryce Harper has got the potential to be that guy, a lightning rod, don't you?
Yeah, he's definitely a guy who came in and kind of flamed out a little bit because of injuries, but he has taken over. This year it looks like he's finally hitting that the potential that made him the number one overall pick. Jason Starks with us. You mentioned Pete, so let's go that way. What do you think his role, if any, will be in the game tonight and moving forward here? So much conversation about him because the game's in Cincinnati. Is this going to be all for naught? Do you think Pete is just kind of in the background and not really mentioned all that much tonight?
Well, he hasn't been much in the forefront so far. That is about to change here in a few hours. Let me tell you what to expect. At some point tonight, I believe right before the game, Major League Baseball is going to honor every team's Mount Rushmore, right? The 4 players who were voted on as the franchise 4. There will be 4 Phillies introduced at some point. It'll be 4 pretty good names, but the last team to be introduced will be the Reds. The last player of their foursome, meaning the very last player from anybody's Mount Rushmore who gets introduced, is going to be Pete Rose.
Wow. And
I know that the people on the Reds that I've talked to think this is going to be, for Cincinnati, what Ted Williams before the 1999 All-Star Game at Fenway was to the people of New England. It's going to be an incredibly emotional moment. And I don't know that it can be quite the same thing because, I think there's a certain level of awkwardness to the fact that Pete is still banned from baseball. I think will prevent some of the players on the field from embracing him the way those players embraced Ted Williams at Fenway. But I want you to think about it this way. This is going to be an incredibly emotional moment. And it really may be Pete Rose's very last magic moment. He's not. I don't see any scenario where he gets into the Hall of Fame. I don't know who would elect him. The writers never get a chance to vote on him. There's no way the Veterans Committee, as currently constructed, would ever elect him. This is probably as good, as special, as emotional, as unforgettable as any moment he is going to experience for the rest of his life. So people should turn on their TVs sometime between 7:30 and 8 o'clock and wait for it, because it's going to be amazing. No matter what you think of Pete Rose, he's a really important figure in the history of the sport, and this is going to be his one final slice of fame and emotion.
Excellent stuff from Jason Stark. He's live in Cincinnati with the Major League Baseball All-Star Game tonight, and obviously we're going on, 13 years now of the game counting. Has it evolved? Do the players like it? I hear the managers talking like they manage the game differently. Is this something that is still evolving, or do the players like this?
That's a complicated question. The players would clearly prefer that home field advantage in the World Series go to the team with the best record during the season. And that's a wonderful, beautiful wish. The commissioner makes it obvious that ain't going to happen. They're going to continue it this way because he likes it this way and Fox likes it this way. And look, I would prefer that the game means something to what we had for a while there, where it just became a meet the All-Stars meet and greet, where everybody had to play and nobody cared. And you spent all these weeks debating who should get elected the starter, and they were all at the airport by the end of the fourth inning. This is better than that. But I don't know. Should this really decide something that important? I don't think so. And if it really is, and they really want the game to count, then here's what the commissioners should tell the manager. Don't tell Ned Yost. This game will not be won or lost based on whether you put Brock Holt on the All-Star team. Play Mike Trout for 9 innings. Tell Bruce Bochy, play Bryce Harper for 9 innings. That's the way the game used to be played when it, quote unquote, mattered back in the day, when Ted Williams and Stan Musial were hitting walk-offs in extra innings. I'd love to see that happen. Cal Ripken played all 9 innings not so long ago. Why can't that still happen? If the game counts, let's really make it count.
Jason, obviously, Jonathan Papelbon made some news yesterday. Now, it's not news that we hadn't heard before, but this is him really firing off, and I don't want to say frustration, because he wasn't, saying it in an angry manner. He was very matter-of-fact about it, but basically telling the Phillies, hey, do something with me here. And, was there a lot of people saying, was that the right time for him to kind of go off, or was this expected to hear from Papelbon?
It didn't shock me in the least. Jerry Krasnick of our staff was there for it, because we knew going in he was going to say something. The fact that he said it so emphatically made it a little bit more eye-popping. But this was the kind of forum where, Jonathan Papelbon, if you're familiar with his work, is going to say stuff like this. And, it's just another indication of his increasing level of frustration with the situation he finds himself in, the team he plays for, and their dire straits. And I think it's an indication that the Phillies should need to listen to this. If they don't get him traded, I mentioned this to you last week, if they don't get him traded in the next 2.5 weeks, they're looking at a big problem on their hands. You cannot have that guy on your team on August 1st, or the stuff he said yesterday is going to be nothing compared to the kind of remarks they hear on August 1st if he's still a Philly. But they've got teams interested. They just need to stop holding out for the greatest deal they can possibly make in theory. They've got teams like the Cubs and the Blue Jays, and I think to some extent the Dodgers, maybe even the Nationals, that would go down that road if the price was right. The Phillies paid enough of the money, and it's time to just make this happen and move on. I mean, Ruben talks all the time about how it's time to turn the page and start looking toward players who are going to be a part of it when they get good again. Jonathan Papelbon isn't. It's time to cut the best deal they can make and move on from this guy, because it's going to be trouble if they don't.
Jason Stark, last one for you. As I love to see all the young players. I think I saw you tweet out earlier, what if they had a 26-year-old limit and the game would still be an entertaining game to watch? It is clear that the shift in this game is a young man's game. If you're a 29, 30, 31-year-old guy, you're almost an afterthought anymore.
I mean, I don't know if I'd go that far, but it really is amazing that you have 19 All-Stars, 25 years old and younger. And, you know, people want to read my piece. We did some really fun research to try to, put in some sort of historical perspective how special it is to have so many players 25 and under, 23 and under, making the kind of impact that you're seeing. We got to the All-Star break, 11 different players 25 years old or younger were leading their team in wins above replacement. And, we haven't seen more than that in any season in 35 years, right? There are 5 players who haven't even turned 24 years old. I'm sorry, 7 position players who haven't even turned 24 years old who are on pace to be worth 5 wins above a replacement player or more. And there's only been one season in the history of baseball where there have been that many players that young who have made that much difference. And it was 1964 when the best of that bunch was Dick Allen of the Phillies. The point is, you think intuitively as you look at some of the names that this is kind of a special time and a special generation. The research that I did and some people at ESPN helped me with for this piece proved that this is the kind of thing that happens once in a generation, maybe once every 2 or 3 generations. And there's a fun list in there of different years from maybe the last 50 years where we maybe had similar crops. And to read those names and these names, I thought it was really fun. Really gave me goosebumps just to even do the story. So I hope people check it out.
Yeah, definitely check that out, ESPN.com, and Jason Stark's got it up. I really enjoyed reading that. And unfortunately for the Phillies, all these young players, none of them are theirs. Maybe next year with Franco, and I guess maybe we'll see Nola sometime shortly after the All-Star break. We were saying last week that they didn't want him to pitch because they wanted him to go to the Futures game. We couldn't pitch in that game because he had pitched on Friday night leading into the game, so I didn't get that opportunity either. So maybe we'll see him.
By the way, I had a chance to talk to him a little bit. I asked him if his next start was going to be in Philadelphia. He just smiled at me and he said, "I'm preparing for Allentown." We'll see what happens. You'll notice the Phillies have not named a starter for Monday or Tuesday. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Interesting. I did see a tweet from one of the Lehigh beat writers saying he was scheduled to throw Friday as coming out of the break. Okay. So we'll see. It was him, Biddle, and Sean O'Sullivan are the 3 for the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs set to go. But we'll see. We'll see. I guess the Phillies they can trump them if they feel the need to, I guess. Jason Stark is live at the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. He's brought to you by Team Nissan, the spot where the checkered flag drops. Jason, enjoy the game tonight. I'm sure it'll be a blast.
Mike, great to talk to you, man. Thank you.